and I think we shall have no room for her, for the cottage is small enough." "Oh, no, we don't want her," said Humphrey. "Alice always dresses Edith and herself, too, ever since mamma died. Now we will carry down the bundles, and you make them fast on the pony while I go for your sisters." "But where does Aunt Judith go?" inquired Edward. "She will not leave the house, Master Edward. She intends to stay and speak to the troopers." "And so an old woman like her remains to face the enemy, while I run away from them?" replied Edward. "I will not go." "Well, Master Edward," replied Jacob, "you must do as you please, but it will be cruel to leave your sisters here. They and Humphrey must come with me, and I cannot manage to get them to the cottage without you go with us. It is not far, and you can return in a very short time." To this Edward consented. The pony was soon loaded, and the little girls, who were still playing in the garden, were called in by Humphrey. They were told that they were going to pass the night in the cottage, and were delighted at the idea. "Now, Master Edward," said Jacob, "will you take your sisters by the hand and lead them to the cottage? Here is the key of the door. Master Humphrey can lead the pony, and Master Edward," continued Jacob, taking him aside, "I'll tell you one thing which I will not mention before your brother and sisters. The troopers are all about the New Forest, for King Charles has escaped, and they are seeking for him. You must not, therefore, leave your brother and sisters till I return. Lock the cottage door as soon as it is dark. You know where to get a light, over the cupboard, and my gun is loaded, and hangs above the mantelpiece. You must do your best if they attempt to force an entrance, but above all, promise me not to leave them till I return. I will remain here to see what I can do with your aunt. When I come back we can then decide how to act." This latter ruse of Jacob succeeded. Edward promised that he would not leave his sisters, and it wanted but a few minutes of twilight when the little party quitted the mansion of Arnwood. As they went out of the gates they were passed by Benjamin, who was trotting away with Martha behind him on a pillion, holding a bundle as large as herself. Not a word was exchanged, and Benjamin and Martha were soon out of sight. "Why, where can Martha be going?" said Alice. "Will she be back when we come home tomorrow?" Edward made no reply, but Humphrey said, "Well, she has taken plenty of clothes in that huge bundle for one night at least." Jacob, as soon as he had seen the children on their way, returned to the kitchen, where he found Agatha and the cook collecting their property, evidently bent upon a hasty retreat. "Have you seen Miss Judith, Agatha?" "Yes, and she told me that she should remain, and that I should stand behind her chair that she might receive the troopers with dignity. But I don't admire the plan. They might leave her alone, but I am sure that they will be rude to me." "When did Benjamin say he would be back?" "He don't intend coming back. He said he would not, at all events, till tomorrow morning. Then he would ride out this way to ascertain if the report was false or true. But Martha has gone with him." "I wish I could persuade the old lady to leave the house," said Jacob thoughtfully. "I fear they will not pay her the respect that she calculates upon. Go up, Agatha, and say I wish to speak with her." "No, not I. I must be off, for it is dark already." "And where are you going, then?" "To Gossip Allwood's. It's a good mile, and I have to carry my things." "Well, Agatha, if you'll take me up to the old lady, I'll carry your things for you." Agatha consented, and as soon as she had taken up the lamp, for it was now quite dark, Jacob was once more introduced. "I wish, madam," said Jacob, "you would be persuaded to leave the house for this night." "Jacob Armitage, leave this house I will not, if it were filled with troopers. I have said so." "But, madam—" "No more, sir, you are too forward," replied the old lady haughtily. "But, madam—" "Leave my presence, Jacob Armitage, and never appear again. Quit the room, and send Agatha here." "She has left, madam, and so has the cook, and Martha went away behind Benjamin. When I leave, you will be alone." "They have dared to leave?" "They dared not stay, madam." "Leave me, Jacob Armitage, and shut the door when you go out." Jacob still hesitated. "Obey me instantly," said the old lady, and the forester, finding all remonstrance useless, went out and obeyed her last commands by shutting the door after him. Jacob found Agatha and the other maid in the courtyard. He took up their packages, and, as he promised, accompanied them to Gossip Allwood, who kept a small alehouse about a mile distant. "But, mercy on us, what will become of the children?" said Agatha, as they walked along, her fears for herself having up to this time made her utterly forgetful of them. "Poor things! And Martha has left them." "Yes, indeed. What will become of the dear babes?" said the cook, half crying. Now Jacob, knowing that the children of such a malignant as Colonel Beverley would have sorry treatment if discovered, and knowing also that women were not always to be trusted, determined not to tell them how they were disposed of. He therefore replied, Who would hurt such young children as those? No, no, they are safe enough. Even the troopers would protect them." "I should hope so," replied Agatha. "You may be sure of that. No man would hurt babies," replied Jacob. "The troopers will take them with them to Lymington, I suppose. I've no fear for them. It's the proud old lady whom they will be uncivil to." The conversation here ended, and in due time they arrived at the inn. Jacob had just put the bundles down on the table when the clattering of horses' hoofs was heard. Shortly afterward the troopers pulled their horses up at the door and dismounted. Jacob recognized the party he had met in the forest, and among them Southwold. The troopers called for ale, and remained some time in the house, talking and laughing with the women, especially Agatha, who was a very good-looking girl. Jacob would have retreated quietly, but he found a sentinel posted at the door to prevent the egress of any person. He reseated himself, and while he was listening to the conversation of the troopers he was recognized by Southwold, who accosted him. Jacob did not pretend not to know him, as it would have been useless, and Southwold put many questions to him as to who were resident at Arnwood. Jacob replied that the children were there, and a few servants, and he was about to mention Miss Judith Villiers, when a thought struck him. He might save the old lady. "You are going to Arnwood, I know," said Jacob, "and I have heard who you are in search of. Well, Southwold, I'll give you a hint. I may be wrong, but if you should fall in with an old lady or something like one when you go to Arnwood, mount her on your crupper and away with her to Lymington as fast as you can ride. You understand me?" Southwold nodded significantly, and squeezed Jacob's hand. "One word, Jacob Armitage. If I succeed in the capture by your means, it is but fair that you should have something for your hint. Where can I find you the day after tomorrow?" "I am leaving the country this night, and I must go. I am in trouble, that's the fact. When all is blown over, I will find you out. Don't speak to me any more just now." Southwold again squeezed Jacob's hand, and left him. Shortly afterward the order was given to mount, and the troopers set off. Armitage followed slowly and unobserved. They arrived at the mansion and surrounded it. Shortly afterward he perceived the glare of torches, and in a quarter of an hour more thick smoke rose up in the dark but clear sky, and at last the flames burst forth from the lower windows of the mansion, and soon afterward they lighted up the country round to some distance. "It is done," thought Jacob, and he turned to bend his hasty steps toward his own cottage, when he heard the galloping of a horse and violent screams. A minute afterward James Southwold passed him with the old lady tied behind him, kicking and struggling as hard as she could. Jacob smiled as he thought that he had by his little stratagem saved the old woman's life, for that Southwold imagined that she was King Charles dressed up as an old woman was evident, and he then returned as fast as he could to the cottage. In half an hour Jacob had passed through the thick woods which were between the mansion and his own cottage, occasionally looking back, as the flames of the mansion rose higher and higher, throwing their light far and wide. He knocked at the cottage door. Smoker, a large dog crossbred between the fox and bloodhound, growled till Jacob spoke to him. Then Edward opened the door. "My sisters are in bed and fast asleep, Jacob," said Edward, "and Humphrey has been nodding this half hour. Had he better not go to bed before we go back?" "Come out, Master Edward," replied Jacob, "and look." Edward beheld the flames and fierce light between the trees and was silent. "I told you that it would be so, and you would all have been burned in your beds, for they did not enter the house to see who was in it, but fired it as soon as they had surrounded it." "And my aunt?" exclaimed Edward, clasping his hands. "Is safe, Master Edward, and by this time in Lymington." "We will go to her tomorrow." "I fear not. You must not risk so much, Master Edward. Those levellers spare nobody, and you had better let it be supposed that you were all burned in the house." "But my aunt knows the contrary, Jacob." "Very true. I quite forgot that." And so Jacob had. He expected that the old woman would have been burned, and then nobody would have known of the existence of the children. He forgot, when he planned to save her, that she knew where the children were. "Well, Master Edward, I will go to Lymington tomorrow and see the old lady, but you must remain here and take charge of your sisters till I come back, and then we will consider what is to be done. The flames are not so bright as they were." "No, it is my house that these Roundheads have burned down," said Edward, shaking his fist. "It was your house, Master Edward, and it was your property, but how long it will be so remains to be seen. I fear it will be forfeited." "Woe to the people who dare take possession of it," cried Edward. "I shall, if I live, be a man one of these days." "Yes, Master Edward, and then you will reflect more than you do now, and not be rash. Let us go into the cottage, for it's no use remaining out in the cold. The frost is sharp to-night."